Hi, this is Anthony. Welcome back to my show. Yesterday, I caught the interview that Captain Tommy Scoville of the Lifeboat did with Aaron Smith-Levin about 3 days prior. I'll have a link to it in the show notes if you haven't seen it. No matter where you come down on the conflict in the Aftermath Foundation, be sure to invest the hour or so it takes to watch the whole video. I think that Aaron covers some new ground that doesn't necessarily change anything that people have believed about the various situations, but he does go into more detail on his substance use, and they ponder, along with the viewers in the super chats, whether his use could be considered any type of addiction, or is it just recreational. After I watched it, I wrote and left a fairly lengthy message on the Lifeboat channel. Surprisingly, no one has hit the like button on that message, with now the exception of me. Although the messages that were left 4 days ago when it was originally aired have lots of likes, which leads me to think that a lot of these videos, there's not many people watching them after the first day that they're up. Anyway, one thing that I want to remind people, and this seems to be new information that Aaron hasn't mentioned in his own videos or videos that he's done with other people, when he was with the woman in question, which was not on 3 consecutive nights, but on 3 different nights, and it seems as though it's possible that they were out in groups on other nights, is that she was not acting normally until the very last night. Many have been under the impression that Aaron gave to viewers inadvertently from his interview with Rabbit that that was the case. It now seems that she has a history around him of being kicked out of restaurants or bars, and I believe he mentioned 2 occasions concerning drinking establishments, and being removed from the courthouse on 2 occasions during the trial. So again, this is not somebody that he hooked up with on 2 occasions where things went perfectly and she was completely rational with no indication of any potential problems, and then things went south on the 3rd night. This was somebody that he personally witnessed being kicked out of various establishments due to her, let us say, crazy behavior. So, just something to think about when you're arguing that Aaron is a victim. Again, I agree with you that Aaron is a victim of some form of perhaps domestic violence from the woman when they were in the room. But this is when he allowed her into the room after witnessing various types of her inappropriate behavior on other occasions, including leading up to the point that he then let her into the room when other people left. And you'll get that if you carefully watch the video. Again, I agree Aaron is a victim, but he also made extremely reckless decisions despite ample evidence that would indicate that there could be some problems with this woman. And the second comment that I wanted to make, I address in the letter that I'm going to read in a moment, is Aaron's confused memory when it comes to what substances were involved on what days. In the interview that he did with Rabbit, he admits that alcohol and psychedelic mushrooms were consumed on the night of the incident in question in Los Angeles. Early on in the interview with Captain Tommy, he denies that those substances were consumed the night of the incident, that it was another night, but later on he does recall that it was in fact on that night. Again, I don't think that Aaron is lying. If you want to lie and cover it up, you just wouldn't bring up references to alcohol and psychedelics. But for many of Aaron's supporters and detractors, they want to get a full understanding of what happened, and his testimony, which varies, is not helping his case. He's not trying to recall something that happened 8 years ago when he was in college or something. This is something that happened earlier this year, maybe 8 months ago, and has had a profound effect on Aaron's life and public career, so it would seem to behoove him to have thought about what happened to get his facts straight. So it would seem that when he's being interviewed on different YouTube channels, he's having a hard time recollecting exactly what happened. Again, I personally believe the general gist of his narrative. I believe that he was a victim of the woman. He did not do anything to her other than perhaps at the very end trying to get her off his back when she jumped up on him trying to give him a hug while they were waiting for the Uber or Lyft driver, and that's when she fell down and hit her head at the pharmacy. I do believe him, but I think that he's a bit careless with some of the details and facts of the narrative, and I think that if you've watched him as much as you watch me, he really likes to, or as much as I've watched him, he really likes to drill down on specific words and concepts that people use when he thinks that they have a clear, definite meaning. And we've seen this intense discussions with Mitch Brisker, as well as with that former Scientologist in Australia that he's had some intense discussions with. So to Aaron, words and definitions seem to have very precise meanings, and he wants to really drill down hard when other people are using them, but then he's a lot more lax when he's sometimes using them himself. Okay, let me read what I left on the lifeboat comment section for the video in question, and be sure to stay tuned for the whole thing because I'm going to address some people's questions and comments later. Captain Tommy, really great show. I'm glad that Aaron agreed to do it with you. I think it's important for his detractors and supporters to hear from him address things more fully, especially issues that he may have touched upon but not elaborated on much in other videos, especially the one that he did with Rabbit, and in particular what the status, if any, that alcohol and or any type of drugs may have played in the chain of events leading up to his departure from the Aftermath Foundation. Acknowledging I have very little technical or practical insight into evaluating anybody, I nevertheless don't think that he has an addiction to alcohol or drugs, although as he's pointed out, when he has gotten into trouble, there is usually alcohol related. I also find him to be credible and generally seem to be honest. I know that there is a small but significant minority that disagree with me on that, and I hear from them on my channel, but I don't see him saying things where I catch him in a lie. But that being said, I do see that he has a problem keeping facts and sometimes his stories straight. And I agree that this is something that can be completely different than lying. Again, I don't think that he is lying. But when you have him say on Rabbit's show that on the night of the incident in LA there was psychedelic mushrooms and alcohol involved, and then early on in his interview with you, he says that that wasn't the case on the third night that he was with her, that maybe he meant that it was earlier when he was at a bar with her when she got kicked out of. But later on he did remember that there was probably alcohol and some type of mushrooms involved in the last night with her. Now, I can understand if this happened 7 years ago that some of the details might be fuzzy, but this is something that happened earlier this year, and this is something significant that he's now feeling the need to talk about. And while I think that many people would have to scratch their heads to try to remember what they ate for breakfast yesterday, if he's going to speak publicly about these incidents and confirm or deny alcohol or any type of drug use, whether or not it contributed to what happened, it's still important to figure out what his story was and then stay consistent with it. And I say that for his sake because I don't want people seeing minor discrepancies, which we could all make, but which some people might interpret either as an act of deception or because he was so intoxicated that he doesn't truly remember what happened and therefore throws the whole narrative into doubt. And again, in my mind, I have no doubt that the narrative about what happened that night is generally accurate, and I think while he put himself in that position, he nevertheless was truly a victim of a mentally ill woman, and it's too bad that happened. But I think that this has forced changes in his life, some of them not initially what he wanted, but I think it's time for him to move on from the Aftermath Foundation. And now, as a divorced person myself, sometimes getting a formal divorce is the best and right thing to do so that you can move on with your life while still maintaining a civil relationship with your former spouse and continue a loving relationship with your children. Again, I hope that the discussion in this video helps to either placate certain people or help further heal others as the SPTV community hopefully moves on to bigger and better things. Thanks so much. Okay, that's the end of my comments to Captain Tommy. Let's move on to a couple comments and questions that I've gotten from viewers recently. And these are just some of the most recent ones that I've gotten, not necessarily picked for any other reason than that. The first one is from Daniel Clark Zach, who I looked at their channel, and they have 1 subscriber. They write, honestly, anyone that judges another on a holier-than-thou platform has already blinded by prejudice to the point where they're either willfully ignorant or downright malicious, so towards the plight of others. Drug use outside of recreation is almost unanimously caused by pain and suffering. Everyone is so full of themselves. Unless you're the one that uplifted everyone around you, you have no room to talk. As to achieve your success, you've likely stepped on more than a few toes to get there. Success always has consequences, and apathy is always deafening. So I would assume that since this was left on one of my videos, one that they probably haven't actually watched it or watched many of my videos, but I assume that it's directed towards me. So they seem to think that I have a holier-than-thou platform, and that I'm already blinded by prejudice to the point where I'm either willfully ignorant or downright malicious, so towards the plight of others. I think it's pretty understandable despite the misspellings and ungrammatical structure of that sentence, but I don't think that I'm willfully ignorant. I've watched everything I could find where both parties, especially Aaron, have talked about the situation. I'm not quite sure how I'm malicious. I repeatedly praise the accomplishments of Aaron. I encourage people to continue watching his videos as well as to continue watching the videos of all the parties involved. And I encourage people to support Aaron's foundation in the future if that's something that they wish to do. I do think that Aaron is engaged in a series of escalatingly problematic behaviors over the past 4 or 5 years, as he's detailed in his own videos, as well as the interview with Rabbit and now the interview with Captain Tommy. The commenter says that drug use outside of recreation is almost unanimously caused by pain and suffering. Everyone is so full of themselves. As I've pointed out in a number of videos, I don't think that Aaron has a drug or alcohol use problem. But as he's pointed out, when he has a problem with the law or in other situations, it usually coincides with his use of alcohol, which he stated in the video in question, that when he drinks to get drunk. I won't speak for Captain Tommy, although I will say that he indicated a number of times that he did not think that Aaron had a substance abuse addiction in the video that was released 4 days ago. I have no doubt that some people on the internet have pushed the narrative that Aaron has some type of addiction. I've been very careful not to say or even imply that, and if you watch my videos, you'll see that many times I've stated that I don't think that he has an addiction. But again, there is a lot of problematic behavior that is occurring simultaneously with him recreationally utilizing substances. Again, what I've seen Aaron and other people on the internet terming his use is recreational. So I'm not quite sure why you would direct those accusations against me when you say everyone is so full of themselves. Certainly somebody is. Daniel, Clark, Zach. And before we even move on to your second paragraph, let's think about the concept of judging. Now, obviously, you've judged me very clearly here, although I think entirely incorrectly, but I don't know your emotional or mental state of mind, so I won't even comment on that. But do reasonable people have the right to look at a situation, especially when you have a lot of facts, and make a judgment on it? Let's take World War II. According to your logic, we shouldn't look at Hitler and the Holocaust and judge them. Maybe he was completely right in what he did. Well, that might be the way you think, but as somebody who studied World War II quite a bit, and somebody who used to live in Europe, and somebody who's been to sites of significance, including Auschwitz, I'm going to make a judgment and say that Hitler was a bad man, and that the Holocaust was a terrible event. If you think that I'm really a bad person for judging somebody like Hitler, who I don't know personally, that's up to you. But I would say that a lot of viewers would disagree with you on that point of view. Let's look again at your second paragraph. Unless you're the one that uplifted everyone around you, you have no room to talk. As to achieve your success, you've likely stepped on more than a few toes to get there. Success always has consequences, and apathy is always deafening. quite personally, if you've watched all my videos concerning the Aftermath Foundation, I think that you would find me to be uplifting. I said it is uplifting to see that Aaron is moving on now, that he's come to terms with what has happened with the Aftermath Foundation board meeting. He and his wife have agreed to divorce, which I think is the best thing for people to do in many situations, and I hope that they can do it in a very civil manner that respects each other, and so that they can continue being great parents to their children. I feel uplifted that he wants to start a new foundation, and I think that he has a great number of supporters on the internet who support that foundation financially, or at least I hope that they will. I think that the rest of the members of the Aftermath Foundation still are great people who make great content on YouTube, and I hope that they're able to continue providing the services that the Aftermath Foundation has been providing for ex-Scientologists for the past 6 or so years. I would be interested to hear whose toes you think that I've stepped on. Again, you wrote, success always has consequences and apathy is always deafening. Okay, well, what are the bad consequences of the little success that I've had getting my channel monetized? Then you see that apathy is, or you say that apathy is always deafening. Honestly, what does that mean? Who's being apathetic here? Not me. I've researched and spent hours on each of my videos. That's not the trait of an apathetic person. And if something is deafening, it means that you can't hear it. So if you can't hear it, how do you know it's there unless you see it? And if you can see it, then it's not hidden. And it would seem to me that if apathy is actively engaged in, then it may well not be deafening, much less always deafening. I think what you wrote probably sounded good to you, kind of like a car bumper sticker, but it's just full of non sequiturs and really doesn't mean anything. But I do appreciate you taking the time to write. Here's another one, and I'm going to block out the name just because I don't want to embarrass the person in the off chance that my answer might be uncomfortable to them. They write, after watching down the rabbit hole, I'm very disappointed in this so-called board. If the roles were reversed and this happened to one of the women on the board, I'm sure results and responses would have been completely different. Well, for one thing, I think that unfortunately in America we often have double standards, but it's not the type of double standards that some people think. I think that there are a lot of cases where people of certain groups or certain gender identifications get a pass on behavior that other people don't get a pass on. That being said, I think that when we have a scenario where you're deciding on the fate of somebody, in the case of the Aftermath Foundation, there's the decision being considered on whether to remove a board member. Now we all know that Aaron was removed from the board. The commenter, from my understanding, seems to think that he was treated unfairly as a man, and that if one of the female members of the board had done what Aaron did, that they would not have been removed from the board. And by the way, let's remember that Rabbit just interviewed Aaron and got his perspective. He's not going to give necessarily an accurate perspective of other board members. And as far as I know, she hasn't interviewed them. So basing your whole conclusion on watching a single video of one side of the story may not give you the whole true picture. Okay, let's say that Claire and Mark are secretly separated while publicly giving an indication that they're still married and living under the same roof, and that has been the case for the past 4 or 5 years. Okay, and in that time Claire gets drunk and so rowdy at a bar during Mardi Gras that the police are called, and she receives a trespass, although she doesn't realize it at the time, and she's living a bachelorette lifestyle now. Another time, when she's a candidate for a city council position, she's hanging out at her favorite cigar bar, which she does 3 or 4 times a week, drinking, when she sees an attractive Scientologist that she knows comes in with a man, presumably the woman's boyfriend. A man sitting next to Claire comments on the woman's attractiveness, and Claire, who is drunk and admits that she gets loud when she's drunk, was discussing with this man that she didn't seem to know how sexually active the girl or the young lady in question might be in the bedroom, which prompted the girl's boyfriend to get up and punch Claire in the face, knocking her off of the bar stool, whereupon he left. Claire calls the police while the young lady in question leaves the bar, and Claire runs after her and ends up calling her a bad word that starts with the letter C. Claire engages in online disputes with other people in the ex or anti-Scientology world, such as Tony Ortega or Chris Shelton. Claire goes to Los Angeles to report on a trial, and while there, hooks up with another person on 3 occasions. The last occasion, one where she sustains an injury and intends to go to the emergency room, although in the end she doesn't. This is one that involves a mentally ill person that Claire has been having an intimate relationship with, and one which could have easily ended up with Claire in jail should events have taken a minor turn. The other person involved claims that Claire attacked them and sends messages including a short video to perhaps thousands of people in Claire's social media feed, according to her, as well as to the members of the Aftermath Foundation and other people. Claire does not reach out to members of the Aftermath Foundation to explain her side of the situation and is upset that the other members don't reach out to her to ask her about it. Eventually, there's negotiations back and forth as to her voluntarily resigning from the board, but right before the resignation is set to take place, she convinces the board that she's changed her ways and will not repeat any issues. So they agree to let her stay. Soon after that, she then engages in a controversy with an anti-Scientologist lawyer and then gets involved in an email exchange between board members and the attorney. Her behaviors have violated the morals clause that has been in the Aftermath Foundation bylaws since it was founded, as well as a violation of a code of conduct policy that was adopted by the board that she was made aware of, but which she had told the board that she would not agree to. Whether she voted on it or not doesn't matter because the majority of the board members had approved it. That's how things are approved on boards. In addition to the events narrated above, she then publicly admits that on 2 occasions she's tried a white powder, including in Colombia on a girls' trip to Colombia, to do at least 2 bad types of things. And she admits that alcohol and psychedelic mushrooms were consumed on the night of the incident in Los Angeles. So that's the narrative that I've laid out many times when people argue that Aaron has not done anything wrong, and in this case I've just substituted the name Claire. If I was on the board of the Aftermath Foundation and Claire was engaging in these activities, which violate bylaws and policies, I would vote to get rid of her. I can tell you that I've been on a number of real boards. I know that most of you have not. It does not matter if the board member is male or female. They may try to play that card, but when people are reprimanded or ejected from a board, it's because of their behavior, not their gender. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. I do appreciate it. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit the like button. And please do leave a comment. As you can see, I read all of them. Thanks so much, and see you soon.